Hi, this is Jody Lamb at the Princeton ABC Finance location.
And this is Todd Morris at the Hopkinsville location.
And we can help you recover from the holidays with easy payments you can afford.
At ABC Finance, we provide loans up to $15,000.
We are locally owned and staffed, and decisions are made quickly, usually within an hour.
No appointment is needed. Walk-ins are welcome.
You can even give us a call, and we will take your application over the phone.
Or you can apply online at abcfinanceonline.com.
ABC Finance in Hopkinsville on Fort Campbell Boulevard next to O'Charlie's, and in Princeton Plaza. ABC Finance. All loans subject to normal credit approval.
Hello friends, this is Donnie Baker with Audubell Hearing Center, and I'm here to tell you that not all hearing aids are created equal. They may look the same on the outside, but it's the brain on the inside that counts. Our new VIA hearing aids were recently awarded Time Magazine's Best 100 Inventions of 2019. Come experience the Audubell difference. Offices in Paducah, Murray, and Princeton. Call 270-554-1900 today.
Z.O. Bros Formals in Princeton, one of the largest formal wear stores in the area, is having an end-of-the-year huge sale. It's the perfect time to find that dress that will have all eyes on you the moment you walk in the room. Holiday parties, pageants, wedding, or prom, whatever your event, treat yourself to a design that is as unique and as beautiful as you are. Bring in a $25 gift card for donation to local storm victims and receive 50% off the entire store. Z.O. Bros, Main Street in downtown Princeton.
The I didn't realize you liked me that way deal. Because it's one thing to receive McDonald's, but an entirely other thing to know that they woke up early to face the world and bring you McDonald's breakfast still hot in the bag.
Appreciate you.
There's a deal for every act of service at McDonald's. Get a sausage McMuffin with egg, hash browns, and a small hot coffee for just $5. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
It's not often we're given an opportunity to save another person's life. Western Kentucky Regional Blood Center gives us that opportunity every day. What if we could do that 6 times a year? With each pint of blood donated, Western Kentucky Regional Blood Center is able to use it to save 3 lives. That could be 18 lives each year. Think about it. Western Kentucky Regional Blood Center, 1902 South Virginia Street, Hopkinsville. Visit WKRBC.org for times of operation.
It's time for your SportsEdge.com Sideline Report with Todd Griffin. Talking sports and more here on 1580, 103.3 WPKY and worldwide at WPKYonline.com. Here's your host, Todd Griffin.
Good morning, everyone. The Sideline Report is on the air from 1035 West Main Street in Princeton. Welcome to the WPKY studios this morning. We'll be talking a little bit later on today with Ed Marlowe of the Edge Media Group. Going to talk a little bit about Murray State's move to the Missouri Valley Conference and other things in the sports world, so stay tuned for that. Do want to remind you, though, that we have Second Region All-A Classic basketball action for you coming up tonight here on WPKY. Games will be played at Lyon County. The opener tonight has the Caldwell County Lady Tigers taking on the Livingston Central Lady Cardinals. That game is at 6 o'clock in Eddyville. The late game tonight has host Lyon County taking on Crittenden County. We'll have the Caldwell County game for you tonight right here on WPKY, so be sure and tune in as Dennis Stevens and Bob Hayes bring you all the action. That's the Second Region All-A Classic Girls Semifinals tonight at Lyon County. Now, the boys' Second Region All-A Classic gets going again on Friday over at University Heights Academy. The Caldwell County Tigers will play the opener Friday at UHA against the host Blazers. Again, that's at 6 o'clock. The late game for the boys on Friday in the semis has Lyon County taking on Heritage Christian Academy from Hopkinsville. The championship games are set for Saturday. Girls at 4 o'clock in Eddyville. The guys at 7 o'clock over in Hopkinsville at UHA. Of course, hopefully any bad weather that's in the forecast will stay away from us, and we won't have to change any of those plans. But right now, both championship games are set for Saturday. Girls at 4, guys at 7 o'clock. Back with more on the Sideline Report after this timeout here at 1580 103.3 WPKY.
Life is filled with moments. Moments we share with those we love, worry about, and strive to protect the most. At Woodman Life, we provide life insurance and retirement products to help protect you and your family so that you can enjoy all the moments to come.
This is Josh Ray, your local Woodman Life agent. Come see us at 1009 West Main Street or give us a call at 365-6111.
Certain eligibility and age restrictions apply. Woodman of the World Life Insurance Society, Omaha, Nebraska.
Get into shape and feel good at Trilogy Performance Sports. Trilogy offers a wide range of family-friendly classes as well as personal training, yoga, gymnastics, sports training, cardio, and weightlifting. Trilogy has something for everyone. Trilogy now offers an app with online workouts, live classes, nutrition tracking, and more. Search Trilogy Performance Sports in your app store. Use sign-up code 1824. For app info and more, follow them on Facebook.
Your local McDonald's wants you to know that they are ready to serve you for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dine-in or the drive-thru is always open, and they offer curbside pickup service. To avoid the wait in the drive-thru, you can download the McDonald's app and try curbside pickup. Stop in soon and enjoy breakfast, lunch, or dinner at your local McDonald's. Proud to be a part of this community. McDonald's of Princeton, proud supporters of the Caldwell County Tigers.
West Kentucky Real Estate and Auction holds monthly auctions at the Auction Center on U.S. Highway 62 in Princeton, in the former Hancock's grocery store. Be sure to check their website for dates and times and listings of auctions and days at the Auction Center. WestKentuckyRealEstate.com has all of their upcoming auctions listed. If you would like to have an auction or would like to find out how to consign at an auction, contact West Kentucky Real Estate and Auction. Wayne Boyd, broker auctioneer.
Happy New Year from the Joshua Tree Boutique in Princeton. Rhonda Stone, owner, hope you and your family had a wonderful Christmas, and their prayer is that the year 2022 will be kind to us all. There have been really hard days in the past year, but we have seen mankind at its finest. Let's continue to be loving, kind, and helpful. Winter is here, and you'll find a beautiful, colorful, unique selection of clothes at the Joshua Tree Boutique on the Court Square in beautiful, historic Princeton, Kentucky.
This is the Sideline Report on 1580 103.3 WPKY. Thanks for tuning in this morning. Joining us now in the studio is Ed Marlowe from the Edge Media Group. And Ed, good morning. Thanks for coming over and being on the show today.
Todd, anytime, man. Anytime I get a chance to come to Princeton, I love the opportunity, so it's nice to be here.
Absolutely, and we want to jump into sports talk right away. And Murray State University is going to the Missouri Valley Conference. I'm not sure I ever thought I would see the day.
I guess for me, well, one, I was a little late getting here, and I guess I can even relay that and liken that to the Racers, better late than never.
Yeah.
I love the Ohio Valley Conference. Just a quick personal opinion. I think it's a terrific conference. It offers a lot of great sports opportunities for local, regional, and national and international student athletes. It's brought in a lot of talent since 1948 and its inception, and Murray State University was one of the founding fathers and mothers of the Ohio Valley Conference. It's a bittersweet day for Murray State athletics, in the sense that there's a lot of love that goes to the Ohio Valley Conference. You're not in this position without it, without all the success over the last 74 years. But again, it was founded in 1948, should have been founded before World War II, but of course a World War kind of slowed that all down, and now Murray State's headed to the Missouri Valley Conference. Not only is it the second oldest conference in college athletics, Todd, but it's really good. And I pause for an emphasis there, because it's a really, really good conference in multiple sports. And you look at Murray State's platform and their footprint based on not just alumni, but also their student athlete base, and more than 70-80% of both are also involved in the Missouri Valley Conference. So as things started to matriculate over the last couple of years, teams leaving for different opportunities, Murray State had to reevaluate what their next chapter was, and after 74 years, it's the Missouri Valley.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm not sure Murray State wanted to leave the OVC, but I think when everyone else left, and when I say everyone else, I mean Austin Peay, Eastern Kentucky, those kind of schools, I think Murray just eventually saw the writing on the wall and had to search for greener pastures.
I think if you take a look at, and I've talked a lot about this with WPSD sports director Jeff Bidwell, and Dave Winder, SID, Kevin Saul, even Dr. Bob Jackson over the last couple of weeks. The thing about it is, it's not so much even didn't want to leave. It's just there's such a proud tradition with the Ohio Valley Conference. And I think that tradition will continue in a different way. I really do. And that's me, looking at brighter roses and wearing pink glasses. Again, I love the Ohio Valley Conference. And from a personal standpoint, I was able to build a sports career by covering different student athletes at Murray State University and the rest of the conference and their experiences therein. But the Ohio Valley Conference, Murray State and Belmont play this Saturday, women's and men's basketball. It is going to be a colossal matchup for both programs. Belmont's going to the Missouri Valley Conference. So when you have Belmont, Eastern Kentucky, Jacksonville State, that's now jumped not one but two conferences since leaving the Ohio Valley, Austin Peay. I mean, this is the cream of the crop for the Ohio Valley Conference and has been for the last 10 to 15 years. You lost Austin Peay, which has brought in this huge influx of money. You lost Jacksonville State, which is a perennial contender in FCS football. They beat Florida State this year.
Yeah.
When you lose Eastern Kentucky, a long, proud power in FCS football and a growing power in basketball, Austin Peay, Murray State, obviously, needs little introduction to the college basketball world and other sports as well. You just find yourself in this situation of asset preservation. And that's the one thing that kept being reiterated during the board meeting last Friday, is that if we're going to preserve the history that we have and build new history, we're going to have to take our experience somewhere else, because the Ohio Valley Conference is reshaping itself as, in my opinion, an incubator league, a league that's going to nurture D2s and struggling D1s back to some sort of lifestyle that's befitting of college athletics.
Well, I guess the million-dollar question then is, where did the OVC go wrong in so many schools wanting to leave?
That's a great question. And I'm also not the president, CEO of the Ohio Valley Conference, but if I'm looking at it through my lens and my spectrum, if we're going to say going wrong, I would say part of it is a bit of a naivete, in the sense that you're not looking at the picture of college athletics as it is now, as opposed to what it was 20 years ago. We know that revenues in television, particularly through the football aspect, are pivotal in survival and advancement in college athletics. And we know that FBS football is a super big, important factor in that survival, in the sense of generating bowl revenue, generating scholarship monies, generating ad revenue, so on and so forth. I feel like that's probably where the OVC maybe, quote, went wrong. I think another step where the OVC maybe just went a different direction than where these schools wanted to go. We'll see if it's wrong in 15 or 20 years, maybe shorter than that if things don't go great, is that I don't know if there was a aggressive search for Division I programs to replace. You have to remember, from a timeline perspective, Todd, you had Jacksonville State made its announcement along with EKU quickly. They're like, we're headed to the ASUN. Now Jacksonville State's headed to Conference USA, but that's another discussion for another time. But you had those two schools leave right away. Well, then Austin Peay, Belmont, and Murray State were kind of that leftover triumvirate of talent, like top of the league in multiple sports for all sorts of different years. Those three schools, I think, at some point sat down with the rest of the league board of presidents and said, okay, what's our next step? What's the Ohio Valley Conference going to do to replace that vacuum of power and vacuum of money? And I think over the last 2 years, those conversations did not go as planned. And when Austin Peay became the third team to announce, it wasn't long after that Belmont announced. And it just ended up being this domino effect of, because now the Ohio Valley Conference, Todd's bringing in University of Arkansas Little Rock. I think it's a great move, I think it's an absolutely slam dunk move for the league, but what does the OVC do to replace the other 3 teams prior to Murray State leaving being the 5th? What does the OVC do to replace those other 3 teams? A lot of rumors matriculated over the last 18 months. Do you bring in a Grand Valley State from Michigan? Do you bring in Lincoln Memorial in Tennessee, the Rail Splitters, which is an awesome mascot? Do you bring in another D2? Do you convince the University of Southern Indiana to go to D1 and make that transition, much like their counterparts in Bellarmine did going to the ASUN? So there were just all these different questions, I think, over the last year that these board presidents, kind of brought to the table and said, well, who are we going to bring in? Are we going to try and entice another strong Division I program or a really high caliber D2 program to come in? Or are we just going to sit on our thumbs and say, thanks for playing, this is the OVC? And I think, as you can see what's happened, the latter is what happened. There's some thumb sitting, at least from what I've heard from an opinion standpoint. And again, the OVC may announce something in the next month or 2 or 3 months even. But, a lot of thumb sitting, I think, in the minds of many of these presidents that have to make these decisions.
You look at the teams that left the OVC, though, recently, and you look at a Belmont or a Jacksonville State, and you're thinking, well, those teams didn't really have the history with the conference anyway. But I think if you're Murray State and you see Eastern Kentucky leave, and then Austin Peay's
also a founder.
Yeah, and then Austin Peay's right out the door behind them.
Yeah.
That's concerning.
Well, Austin Peay not a founder, but might as well have been at that point. They were in, I believe, in the early 1960s. You can double-check my math on that. It's a little bit before my time. But it's one of those situations where Austin Peay certainly is a well-known conference opponent, many rivalries across the conference, none probably more emphatic and amazing than with Murray State University. That's the battle of the border, and something that's been iterated to me that I do believe Austin Peay now in the ASUN is going to remain a bitter rival of Murray State University. It's just going to be a non-conference affair for most sports.
Won't be quite the same, not being a conference rival.
Not as much on the line. No, that's a good point. But certainly something that's going to be really interesting to watch. The one thing that I will say is that not only did Murray State leave the Ohio Valley Conference in the right way, and not only has that been iterated, but it's just a fact. They're going to pay an exit fee. They were the last ones to shut off the light, but I hate to say that because the conference is beautiful. I love its regional platform. I love what it stands for. I love the underdog mentality that the OVC embraces. And I love the fact that this vacuum of power is probably going to help another school rise to prominence in the Ohio Valley. That being said, it is going to look different. There's no way to get around that. I can't sugarcoat that. I can't, remain high on some pedestal saying that the OVC is going to be a top 15, top 20, conference, because that's going to be hard to replicate moving forward. You just look, and again, I hate to continue to use Murray State men's basketball as the main platform because Murray State athletics has so many different sports that are successful in their own way. But if you look at just net ratings, I know college basketball is obviously we're in the mid throws right now. It's big time news at the moment. But if you look at Murray State's net rating right now, it's in the top 50. You look at their, you take a look at their Ken Palm rating, top 80. Belmont's the same way, top 50 they're top 80 in RPI, top 80 in Ken Palm, and top 50 in the net rating. They're right there with Murray State, and again, they play on Saturday at 4:00 in probably one of the better college basketball games that we'll see this weekend. So, and the women are right there in that same conversation. You have those two programs, and now they're headed to the Missouri Valley, and then Austin Peay, had Terry Taylor for all those years and needs no introduction. EKU's been really good. JSU, it just goes on and on. When you have those basketball programs leaving on top of everything else that they provide for the conference, it's tough. It's tough to see, and it'll change the OVC's footprint for sure.
We're talking with Ed Marlowe this morning, and He's our Murray State resident expert, so we're getting all the information about Murray State's big move to the Missouri Valley Conference. Need to get to a timeout on the show, though, but we'll continue our discussion after this here at 1580, 103.3 WPKY.
Your WPKY Weather Edge Weather Center forecast is brought to you by Treasures Remembered Florist and Greenhouse.
For the Weather Edge Weather Center, slight chance of rain today with a high 48 degrees and increasing clouds tonight, overnight low 28. Mostly cloudy on Friday with a high 42. Chance of rain, snow mix in the forecast on Saturday with a high 38 degrees. Once again, our forecast today, slight chance of rain. Today's high 48.
Trice Hughes has been serving Western Kentucky for over 60 years. Their experienced sales force, ASE certified techs, and all the friendly folks at Trice Hughes have worked to become your family's exclusive automotive dealer. The home team that's kept our families safe on the road for generations. From work to play and everything in between, your home team has what you need. Stop by and drive the difference. Our home team, Trice Hughes, Highway 91 North in Princeton.
Goodwin Insurance Agency and Woodall Agency have great news. Effective January 1st, they have joined forces to provide even more options for all your insurance needs. Together, they provide the best prices and coverage from top-rated insurance companies and insure all lines of insurance. See Tori Hammett or Fred Foltz or go to insurewithgoodwin.com for more information. Don't pay too much for your insurance. Let them shop for you and save today.
This is the Sideline Report at 1580, 103.3 WPKY. Thanks for joining us this morning. Ed Marlowe from the Edge Media Group is in the studio with us, and we're talking about Murray State's move to the Missouri Valley Conference. And if you missed it, the Racers are on the move, leaving the Ohio Valley Conference, a founding member, but on the way to the Valley. Ed, we're going to hear the Valley a whole lot in the near future.
I've already heard a lot of people say that the Racers have already left for greener pastures, and in a quite literal sense, from one Ohio Valley to the Missouri Valley. Todd, the one thing that I will say, again, I hope that Murray State fans, Murray State alumni, and fans of the program maybe are just gracious of what happened in the Ohio Valley Conference. You don't get to the Missouri Valley without this 74-year run, you know, that happened for Murray State. Not just in men's basketball. You take a look at rifle, women's golf, baseball's had success, football's had success. Every single program has, I believe, won a championship if you go and you look through, you know, all of the different annals of time. So it's one of those situations where, you know, women's soccer's been really good, you know, in the last 15 years. So it's just, you men's golf, we can go on and on. Tennis, you know, needs little under. You know, Benny Purcell won 10 straight championships in the 80s. He won the decade, quite literally. And so you have this situation, and I think people. I'll even dovetail into that super quick. I think people are so excited right now because they want to sponsor new sports, because the Missouri Valley has, you know, wrestling. They have men's tennis. You know, there's a men's soccer league, which I think a lot of people would be interested in discussing for Murray State athletics. But I digress. It's, you know, you talk about the Missouri Valley and what it brings for Murray State athletics. It can bring prosperity. I think, I don't want to call them concerns, but I think the one thing that people do need to realize, there will need to be a major investment in the athletic budget. Murray State football, if it's accepted into the Missouri Valley Football Conference in 2023, as that's perceived to be happening, they've already applied, then, you know, that's one of the top FCS football leagues in the country. They've produced the champion 9 out of the last 11 years in North Dakota State. So the Bison need little introduction for anybody that loves college football. They are absolutely terrific, and it goes on down the line. Every program in the Missouri Valley Football Conference is top 175 in the SAG ratings. So it's just one of those situations. Murray State finished this year like 197th. You already come in at a little bit of an underdog when it comes to MVFC football. But you know, it's going to be really interesting, and I hope it's just a time of renewal and a time of happiness. You thank the OVC for everything that they've done, and you move forward with a new horizon.
Well, you mentioned football, and it's kind of an interesting situation that the Missouri Valley Football Conference isn't the same as the Missouri Valley Conference.
No, it's not, and you can even leave it at that. It's they have their own commissioner. It has different teams. There is tangential behavior. You have a lot of programs that are in the MVFC that are in the MVC as well. But as far as Missouri Valley Football Conference is concerned, they are their own entity with their own office, their own rules, their own regulations, and their own acceptance. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I would have a feeling, a gut notion that Murray State's officials very likely wouldn't have made this move if football wasn't going to be part of the piece of the pie. I don't have that for certain. I don't have that accurately detailed and written down in some secret notebook. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just seems logical that if football wasn't going to have a home, we're not going to leave it behind. Rory Stewart Stadium is too big to just sit there. It's a multi-purpose facility that is part of their facility master plan. This is not something that they're going to tear down in the coming years. It may get a major renovation, may get a major rework, and it may look completely different than we remember it in the last 25, 30 years at some point in the future, but it is not going anywhere. The structure itself is one of the heart valves of the Murray State Athletic Campus. So it's going to maybe, like I said, look different, but it's going to be a part of the program, and so is that football team and everything that goes around it.
Am I the only one that thinks that Stewart Stadium, when you look at it from the parking lot, kind of looks like a big battleship sitting there?
It's beautiful. I love it. Not only was it a landmark for me as a kid growing up, but I kind of have a soft spot for Murray State anyways. I've been called out more than once for being maybe a little bit too optimistic about Murray State's chances in different types of sports and things like that.
I thought you were going to throw out the homer designation.
I've really tried to put that. I've really tried to put that in a box.
Haven't we all been called a homer at some point, though?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's my job. It was my job. It's not so much anymore. It's more of just a hobby, and I try to attend sporting events and pay attention to the news when I can. But I'm busy with news now, with News Edge, and it's a lot of fun. But on the side, when I've got some free time, I pay attention to what's going on with Murray State athletics. It's kind of hard to get it out of my mind. I live in Murray, and still know a lot of the coaches and a lot of the players, and still try to watch just what's happening and what's unfolding. And a move to the Missouri Valley is, I can't stress enough how much that will impact not just Callaway County and its borders, but Western Kentucky. I'm of the firm notion, regardless of what side of the political fence you lie on, that prosperity is coming to Western Kentucky. I know inflation's high right now, will remain high for quite some time. That's a national problem. That's a worldwide problem, actually. And I know that, Omicron and the COVID-19 are major concerns that we continue to battle on an hourly basis. But the one thing that I will say is I think in the near to not so distant future, you're going to have an I-69 bridge connecting Kentucky to southern Indiana. That's a Missouri Valley Conference piece. You've got the airport in Paducah that's not only getting major renovations, but is going to have a new terminal in the coming years. That's a Missouri Valley Conference piece. We're going to see a lot of prosperity come to Western Kentucky, and I think that's going to impact Callaway, Trigg, Marshall, Lyon, Caldwell. I think it's just I think it's going to really impact all of Western Kentucky. And you have to remember the caliber of opponent. I'm not trying to disparage the Ohio Valley Conference, but the Missouri Valley Conference is a top 15 conference in multiple sports. The quality of play that these teams are going to be doing, not just at Murray State, but all across the league, is going to be a lot different. And I think that energizes and jazzes up a fan base that, you're looking forward to some great sports in the next few years.
Well, and talking about men's basketball, and Murray State has been right up there in the OVC for some time now and kind of helping carry the OVC at times, along with Belmont. You go to a Missouri Valley Conference, and to me the biggest thing, the thing that everybody looks at is probably now you have a chance to maybe get more than one bid to the NCAA tournament from the Missouri Valley, and that was probably never, ever happening in the Ohio Valley Conference.
Well, see, the crazy thing about the Ohio Valley Conference is that they have been able to do it recently, but the problem is, were you going to be able to maintain it? You needed a strong conference slate, and when you had Austin Peay, winning 20 games, and Jacksonville State winning 20 games, and Murray State winning 22, and Belmont 24, and so on and so forth. When you have multiple teams winning 20-plus games, naturally your RPI is going to be heavy enough for, the committee to say, okay, this league was a gauntlet. This league was tough. It's one thing to schedule great non-conference games. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Murray State this year, really mostly every year does a pretty good job in making sure its non-conference slate is testing enough to get you ready for the Ohio Valley Conference. But you need multiple teams in the conference doing that, even if it's just bye games. If you're going to go lose to Missouri and then Illinois and then Florida, go do that. And that way, not only you're making money, but at least it looks like you've been testing yourself against the toughest teams out there. Not every team or in every sport in the Ohio Valley Conference does a really good job of doing that. And I'm not going to call any names out. It doesn't matter. It's what they choose to do as an athletic program. But, there comes a time where you have to tell yourself the league as a whole needs to be raising all ships. And a conference is only good as its worst team. Maybe a little harsh, but in theory, mathematically, when you're looking at scheduling and you're looking at making sure your postseason tournaments are of great repute, your conference can only be as good as its worst program. It's no different than running the race together, and the last person in the line, if you're like if you're 4x100 team, you're only as good as your slowest leg. That's kind of how I think conference athletics is looked at these days, especially from a scheduling standpoint. So that's just a thing that Murray State had to deal with, and now they bring that idea and those concepts to the Missouri Valley.
We talked about losing some of the old rivalries on the OVC, but when you look at the footprint of the Missouri Valley Conference, there are some ready-made rivalries there to be had, too.
Southern Illinois, right out of the gate. Evansville, right out of the gate. Indiana State, right out of the gate, just based on proximity alone. Murray State and SIU are not friends. They've not been friends for a long time. I don't see that changing anytime soon. And there's plenty of Southern Illinois, Saluki alumni in Western Kentucky and Southern Illinois that are ready for this rivalry to reignite. I think something else that's really exciting to me from a non-conference standpoint across multiple sports is that these OVC rivalries have existed for, 60, 70 plus years. Now they're non-conference opponents. Instead of maybe going and getting a D2 opponent or another D1 that's way out of the platform, way out of the footprint, let's get some of these OVC opponents in as non-conference opponents across multiple sports. Women's soccer, tennis, golf, basketball, football. Now, seriously, you're in the Missouri Valley. So you have every card in your hand that you can say, hey, come play us. We're in the Missouri Valley. You beat us? Great. You've got a chip in your belt. You don't beat us? Awesome. We had a Division I win. So I think that's something that I hope plays as a benefactor and as a boon moving forward, not just for the Ohio Valley Conference, which I do think will continue to go on in perpetuity, but for Murray State athletics as well.
Murray State and Austin Peay have already kind of announced that they're going to keep playing each other, and that just makes sense because, that's an easy trip. And
it's 40 miles.
Yeah, that's two pretty good programs in most sports, so that's a pretty good deal to keep that going.
The crazy thing about it, Todd, and this blew my mind, I live in Murray. It's not that big. It's really, it's not that big of a city. Happy to live there. I've enjoyed my time there and will continue to enjoy my time there. But on the south side of Murray, if you go through Paris and Dover, you can be in Clarksville in like 35 minutes if you're, on that side of town. And I say that side of town, it's because you avoid 14 stoplights on 641. But it's one of those situations where if you're in the south part of the county, you could be in Clarksville in no time. And so that rivalry, I just had to stay. I hope UT Martin stays as an opponent in certain situations. I know that, UT Martin football is really, really good. They're defending conference champions. They're probably one of the most successful over the last 10 years under Jason Simpson as far as wins and losses. Maybe not championships during that time. Jacksonville State won several championships. and Austin P won, one or two. It's one of those things. Eastern Illinois with Jimmy Garoppolo, won there in the mid 2010s. So it's one of those situations where you hope that these regional rivals remain, but you're right. The MVC already brings in, and you got Belmont back. That just
continues.
That just continues to build, and that's been a riveting rivalry in men's basketball. But you everything else kind of falls into place, and you hope the southern part of the Missouri Valley Conference starts to become that really, really fired up rivalry that we expect to see between Murray State and those teams.
Just looking at the footprint, looking at a map and seeing where all the Missouri Valley schools are, it looks to me like a north-south breakage there would be great, to have a North Division and a South Division, and maybe that would help everybody with travel a little bit too.
Yeah, I think it would. I think that's been loosely discussed from a football perspective. Of course, you have to remember Murray State football already has most of its contracts locked in for at least 2022, and several non-conference opponents past that. The OVC did something really cool this past year and locked in a Southland scheduling partnership union with the Ohio Valley Conference. So Murray State is honoring that for this next season. They will play, they drew the short end of the stick. They will go play at Southeastern Louisiana, which is a top 15, top 20 program. But it's a great matchup for Murray State football. The rest of the conference is getting that package as well. The OVC and the Southland coming together and saying, hey, listen, we know the OVC doesn't have a ton of games right now. We know the Southland doesn't have a ton of games. Let's make sure we get enough games so that we can have FCS playoff eligibility and have enough Division I FCS, games to play. So, really exciting time there. I thought that was a great move. But for Murray State football and for Murray State athletics, a long-time relationship with the Southland probably wasn't going to work out just because the Southland's footprint is a bit further than the Missouri Valley Football Conference.
Well, and the Ohio Valley Conference now is in danger of maybe losing its automatic bid to the playoffs because you have to have 6 football-playing schools, right? And when Murray leaves, doesn't that just leave 5?
It does, but it gives them time to also, in the next 18 months, find another team that has an FCS football program. I've heard Arkansas Pine Bluff tossed among the many names. As far as the Missouri Valley as far as the Missouri Valley Conference is concerned, I've heard UIC, University of Illinois Chicago, the Flames are almost a shoo-in to reignite the Chicago fan base with the departure of Loyola Chicago to the A10. So that's how this all even started in the first place. It wasn't just the Ohio Valley Conference's shift, but the Missouri Valley Conference, when it was announced that Loyola Chicago was headed to the A10, which is going to continue to keep that as a multi-bid league, the Missouri Valley Conference went knocking on some doors, and I think a few people answered. And, clearly Murray State's one of them. UIC has been rumored as a possible expansion team as well. And, but this also all goes back to 2017, which you and I talked about then, that, Murray State was a finalist to join the Missouri Valley in 2017. So this has been a long-time courtship. And, Murray State had a new president and a new AD since then. So this is a process that had to be thoroughly vetted over the last few months, and here we are.
Well, if there was one knock against Murray State from the Missouri Valley Conference standpoint, it probably was that you mentioned it earlier that Murray's kind of a small place. It's a small community, and I think they were looking for somebody, like you say, a Chicago, that kind of deal, and that was typically what they were looking for. But I think overall Murray State, and they mentioned it during the press conference last week when everybody got together and made this big announcement, the conference kept saying that, everything about Murray State is done the right way.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. From a budgetary standpoint, again, I have iterated that's going to have to improve. But you take a look at, where some of their dealings sit over the last few years, and expectations are pretty high, but I think the fan base maybe might answer the call, as far as donor dollars are concerned. Last year alone, Murray State received more than $13 million. And you have to remember, this is during a pandemic. Imagine what happens when things are robust and the fan base is, reinvigorated with new rivalries and new expectations and new sports to watch. That could be an asset moving forward. But I will agree with you. The one quote knock that I continue to hear is that from a metropolitan standpoint, Murray doesn't necessarily fit that, as much as, people love to say, small, big fish in a small pond. It kind of feels that way sometimes because, we're in Callaway County, it's a suitcase college a lot of times. People go home on the weekends, go see their families, and they should. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, it's a thing. But you are 50 miles from Paducah. You are 95 miles from Nashville. You are 3 hours south of St. Louis. You're 4 hours west of Louisville. You're just close enough to urban society and to those connections to be in a good spot, but you're not close enough to be in like a great spot from a marketing standpoint. But, I think those are things that Murray State's working to overcome. And two things that I thought were really interesting during some of the conversations in the last couple of weeks, Todd, and one of the things is Kyle Oakley Field, and this has been told to me by someone else, so I hope it's accurate, but I think it is. Kyle Oakley Field in Callaway County, the airstrip there, not only is it one of the longer airstrips in Western Kentucky and really all of the Commonwealth, but it's actually a backup base, a backup landing spot for Fort Campbell C-130s. So it's big enough to handle charter planes and things of that nature. Furthermore, something else that was iterated to me too by AD Kevin Saul, and I think it was really interesting and something that people need to remember from a loyalty standpoint, less than 10%, actually less than 8% of college teams right now are in the same conference they were in of which they began.
Oh, wow.
So if you just think about the history of college athletics, teams just aren't in the same place they were 110, 120 years ago, and Murray State after 74 years, actually, officially, and on its 100th birthday, no less, Murray State turns 100 in 2022. Proud institution was established as I believe, Murray Normal School in 1922 as a teacher's college and nurses college, which it still is to this day. Turns 100 this year. So it's kind of, there's a lot of things happening in this centennial, and now Murray State's headed to the Valley.
We're talking with Ed Marlowe this morning. Stay with us. More coming up on the Sideline Report after this break here at 1580, 103.3 WPKY.
Your WPKY Weather Edge Weather Center forecast is brought to you by Bella Marie Boutique.
For the Weather Edge Weather Center, slight chance of rain today with a high 48 degrees and increasing clouds tonight, overnight low 28. Mostly cloudy on Friday with a high 42. Chance of rain, snow mix in the forecast on Saturday with a high 38 degrees. Once again, our forecast today, slight chance of rain. Today's high 48.
Trice Hughes has been serving Western Kentucky for over 60 years. Their experienced sales force, ASE certified techs, and all the friendly folks at Trice Hughes have worked to become your family's exclusive automotive dealer. The home team that's kept our families safe on the road for generations. From work to play and everything in between, your home team has what you need. Stop by and drive the difference. Our home team, Trice Hughes, Highway 91 North in Princeton.
Are you struggling to afford health care medications? Let Health First help you. Whether you are insured, uninsured, or underinsured, you will still be cared for at Health First Community Health Center. We offer financial and prescription assistance to all those that qualify, which is based on income and household size. Contact our office at 1-877-667-7017 for more information, or visit our website, healthfirstchc.net. Same-day appointments and walk-ins are welcome. At Health First, your health is our first concern.
This is the Sideline Report on 1580, 103.3 WPKY. Thanks for tuning in. Ed Marlowe of the Edge Media Group is with us. And Ed, I know it's been some busy times in the news department the last few weeks, so I'm glad you could come in this morning and sit down and talk a little sports with us.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. It's one of those situations where, my job is definitely for the News Edge to cover news, and really unfortunate events over the last month. I think it needs a little introduction. We know that December 10th and 11th has been a really difficult time for Graves County, for Caldwell County, Hopkins County, Lyon County, Marshall County. There's been a lot of tragedy, but in some of that tragedy, there's been a little bit of hope, and maybe in some instances, a lot of hope. And it's been nice to talk to people and hear some positives coming out of what this destruction has been. I hope we never see it again, and hope we never have to deal with it again. But as we deal with it, we learn and we grow, and hopefully we continue to rebuild.
Talked with a lot of people, and tell everybody that I thought the ice storm back in, I guess, 2009 was bad, and I thought that would be like the worst thing I ever had to see. And then you look at the destruction that the tornado brought, and you just, from Mayfield through Princeton, out Dawson Road, over through Dawson, and on up the state, and it doesn't even compare.
No, it really doesn't. And the loss of life, number one, but the loss of, just so many homes and businesses and people that just have to completely regroup. And I'm just glad they're not having to do it alone, I think is the one thing through some of this trauma and difficult time. I think people are realizing maybe they're not as alone as they thought they were. And that's a good thing that can come from this when there isn't much good to come from it.
Well, the incredible thing to me, and I've been out taking pictures at different places, and people will come up to you and talk, and it's got to be just devastating for people who lost their homes and lost possessions and all those kind of things. But everybody seems to have a positive attitude. People are, moving on and thinking about rebuilding, and where you'd think there would be all this sorrow, and I'm sure some of that exists. But when you talk to these people, they kind of pull you up with them, and they kind of give you a positive outlook on what the future is going to be.
Well, I can tell you, Ton, just from my experience in the last month, people want to talk. It's hard for me. I don't like to. I mean, I'm a journalist, and I don't mind asking questions. That's part of the job and a part that I embrace. But the tough part about it is I'm not particularly keen on asking people about their trauma. I'm seeing it firsthand. I was in Mayfield 12 hours after that storm hit. I was in Princeton 36 hours after the storm hit. I still haven't even seen Dawson with my own two eyes. Alan Watts, our news director over at WKDZ, hit me. He's walked those streets, when McConnell came through and so on and so forth, and was there the day Andy stopped in. And so it's like, it's hard for me to want to stop and take pictures and get the audio that we need to get the message out. But then I have to keep telling myself, we have to get the message out because these people, all of us need help in some way in Western Kentucky and on up to Bremen and Muhlenberg County and so on and so forth. And really, I don't want to forget Northeast Arkansas and Northwest Tennessee, where the storm started. And even since then, we've had flooding in Pike County and all the way back over here. And we've had, a tornado touchdown in Hopkinsville. It came out of the blue, quite literally. So it's just been a tough month, really, just all the way up until even New Year's Day, where the tornado touched down for a mile in Hopkinsville with no radar indication, just because it dropped down so quickly between the radar blips and then left. And in that pile, in that 1.1 mile, did enough damage to cause Hopkinsville some issues. So it's just, Pembroke and, Bowling Green. I know that's a little bit farther away, but I mean, it's been a lot of devastation in the last month, and it's hard to see it. It's hard to want to talk about it, but victims and those that need it, those that need the help want to talk about it. And so I'm just here to listen. That's the most important part of our job, I think, right now.
This is the Sideline Report on WPKY, Princeton, Kentucky. Again, thanks for tuning in this morning. And I kind of know what you're talking about because it's not always a lot of fun to walk around and take pictures of all the destruction.
It's not.
But I've told people that, the reason we document this is so that when everything gets rebuilt and cleaned up and looking the way it used to, or even better, we can go back and look at these pictures and say, wow, look how far we've come with this.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It'll be a landmark occasion. Not to make things even darker, but it's part of the reason, we still watch Challenger footage, which this time, in 1986, this week, the Challenger exploded on national television. And, we have to remember the mistakes we made, or the mistakes maybe we didn't make but didn't have any control over, and how we learned to control those situations and built back better. And hopefully that's what we learn out of all this, is to maybe treat our neighbors with a little bit more respect and work to do better, by ourselves and figure out how to get through these types of things together.
Well, the outpouring of help has just been incredible to watch.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably, and it's almost overwhelming. And that's a great thing. It should be overwhelming. If it had been underwhelming, that would have been a depression all on its own. If no one had taken a look at Dawson Springs and said, we don't care, or taken a look at Princeton and said, we don't care, or Bowling Green, on and on, Hopkinsville, Pembroke, Mayfield, so on and so forth, and said, we don't care. I can tell you this much, Todd. I know that people care. I was surprised when BBC Radio called me while I was in Mayfield and asked me to talk about it. That's London, England. The world, I've told many people this, and it just surprised me because I didn't expect any of that. The world has been watching Kentucky rebuild. I can't stress that enough. They're watching Princeton rebuild. They're watching Hopkinsville. They're watching Bowling Green. They're watching Mayfield, Dawson Springs. They're watching these communities come together and the outpouring of support, not just from the regional area, but from across the country and across the world, where these supplies and the two hands and the 2 feet are being brought in from all across all walks of life, returning to this area. And I think that's, people are watching. And I think that's the message that we can send that's at least somewhat positive out of devastation like this.
Caldwell County played over at Dawson Springs earlier this week, and it's interesting when you go by the school because there's just stacks and stacks of water outside, and you go in the gym, and there's just water as far as you can see down the side of the gym. And the big joke when I walked in was somebody said, yeah, the winning team tonight gets to take home 2 cases of water. So, but there's so much of it
That's
there
good.
that, there's literally too much. I mean, Dawson Springs will have water for years and years because so many people have donated, and they're like, we've got 2 tractor trailers that are just full of water.
And I mean, that's a good problem to have. You hope that the water doesn't go stagnant or stale, so you got to use it for different things. But I mean, they're going to need water for months and months to come. Dawson Springs needs peanut butter. They need backpacks for their children. They need toys replenished for the last 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. People lost lifetimes worth of material and belongings. And I understand that this world is more important than belongings. I get that. But that's harder to say, when you're on the other side of it. When you're in the middle of it and you're in the thick of it, and I mean, you don't even have a bathroom to use or a shower to take or a toothbrush or just some of these things that you just think of that you just maybe take for granted. When those things are immediately gone in the blink of an eye. I have talked to so many people, and they have told me that this EF4 tornado that came through 14 to 15, 16 seconds, and your life has completely changed. An absolute blink, a warning on your phone, you get to safety, and within 30 seconds maximum, your life was upended. That's hard for me to fathom, that you had to make a split decision that quickly to save yourself, save a few close belongings, a pet, so on and so forth, get to safety, and then this storm was gone in the matter of moments and did that much devastation. That's just something I just hope we remember that moving forward as we continue to prepare for the possibilities of severe weather.
It's almost surreal, though, when you turn on CNN to watch the news, and they're throwing it to somebody in Dawson Springs, and then they're throwing it to somebody in Mayfield, and you're like, I'm really familiar with both of those. I was just in both of those places, and now you're seeing what, just major devastation in both communities.
Yeah, it's home. I'm stuttering here. I think one of the things that I've discovered more than anything is that Western Kentucky's a lot closer than people think. There may be a lot of anger, there may be a lot of division politically, but Western Kentucky, man, everybody's got family everywhere, or friends, somebody you went to school with, somebody you went to college with, somebody you ran around with as kids, or you ran around with their friends and they ran around and you all ran around together, and everybody just does a lot of running around apparently. But Western Kentucky is a lot closer and a lot tighter knit than people maybe realize. and maybe looking forward, looking ahead, you start to understand just how tightly knit these 18 to 20 counties really are, from Fulton all the way up to McCracken County and Henderson, back down all the way to, Todd, Trigg, Caldwell and Christian. You just, everybody's got family members all around here, friends, and, it's a lot to think about, and it's a lot to take in. And hopefully it leads to an even better response moving forward if we ever find this situation. Again, I hate to say, it's never going to happen again. I don't want to say that. It could happen again. But as we continue to battle these things, we find ourselves more prepared and more ready for the next possible roadblock in the future.
Almost unbelievable, though. It's weird when you take the pictures, when you're standing there, you can look around you and see everything that's happened, and still there's something in you that just doesn't quite believe it.
No, it doesn't. I'll tell you, when I felt that, it was I was standing on, first time it happened is when I was standing on Mayfield's Court Square, and I was doing a live report for WKDZ at the time, and it was about 9 hours after the storms had rolled through. And that was odd for me. I go through Mayfield consistently, living in Murray. I go to Paducah that way sometimes. I was married at St. Jerome, Catholic Church there where Fancy Farm Picnic is. My wife, her whole family, her dad's side of the family grew up in Graves County. That was very difficult for me to see. Very emotional thing for me to see downtown Mayfield, as gutted as it was. Then coming over to Princeton, where I was born, and have a lot of family here, it was tough to see that too, to come a different direction and just think, oh no, it can't be that bad. Well, I remember coming around the turn and seeing all that devastation, and then heading up Mile High Hill where, the UK facility is gone. And I just didn't expect to see that. I didn't expect to see an entire campus obliterated. And I climbed that hill, and, right there on Melanie Lane, it was, there were houses that were damaged, and talked to people there. So it was just hard to fathom that amount of damage, and just to see. I tell you another moment when I felt it too. There was a fence row in Mayfield, and it's along right before you get to US 45 near 58, which is where the tornado did a considerable amount of damage and came through right there in that area. And it's a fairly populated area, but there's a fence row right before you get to the water treatment plant there on the right. And on that fence row, I walked it for about half an hour, and there were pictures, just people's pictures, just stuck to the fence row, basketballs, toys, roofing, garage materials, things that you just thought were going to be there except at their house. And they're just stuck on this fence row. And that just felt like a graveyard to me, and it was really hard. Those are the types of moments when I realized, wow, this is devastation. And it'll take a long time to move past it.
Well, these are things you see on TV, and it's always someplace else. This one hit home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I don't mean that like that sounds at all, but you think about Tornado Alley, and we're right on the cusp of it. Always have been. It's always been a concern, but we've always seemed to catch a break. Maybe not even catch a break. That's not even the right way to put it, because Madisonville dealt with an EF4 not even that long ago. But you always think, well, it escaped major populated areas. That is always the big Brookport. That was awful, but that was kind of right along the riverfront. You think, okay, well, it'll escape major populated areas. This did not escape major populated areas, and that made it all the more traumatic.
Well, Ed, I appreciate you coming over today.
Yeah, anytime.
Glad to talk about Murray State, and, had a few other little sports notes I wanted to throw at you, but we'll save those for another time.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Anytime, man.
That's Ed Marlowe of the Edge Media Group. That's going to wrap us up on the Sideline Report this morning. Don't forget Lady Tiger basketball action coming up tonight here on WPKY. Caldwell County's girls taking on Livingston Central in the Second Region All-A Classic semifinals. 6 o'clock at Lyon County tonight. If you can't get to the game, we've got it for you right here on WPKY. This is Todd Griffin. Thanks for listening to the Sideline Report here at 1580, 103.3 WPKY.
WPKY Princeton.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. More Americans filed new unemployment claims last week and more got off unemployment.
230,000 for jobless claims. We were only looking for a jump of 200,000.